This is a quick video on removing the gauge cluster for 1973 Chevy Monte Carlo, probably Chevelles and El Caminos for the vintage year also. If you look down the back, down the side here, rear deep set, there's a hole here. And there's a deep set hole here on the other side. I already have this one out. I'll show you real quick. There's a stud here and a stud here. It's a 3/8" nut. I used a deep set socket and an extension to get those off. Once you pull those two nuts off, well, naturally you got to pull the whole bezel off first. That's about 15 screws. But once you pull off those two nuts, that is going to loosen the cluster from the chassis. You got to reach in behind the gas gauge. Your speedometer cable is here. It's not screwed on. There is rather handy. There is this metal clip, spring clip here. You reach behind the gas gauge, you pull that clip back, and that's going to release the speedometer cable from the cluster. Once you release the speedometer cable from the cluster, the actual wire harness itself is just above the speedometer, and it's actually affixed to the chassis. So you just got to pull the cluster straight back once you release that spring from the collar of this speedometer cable. Also, there's going to be this cable here is plugged into the back of your clock that's probably not working anyway. And then this cable here is screwed on to the bottom of your steering column, and that controls the park, reverse, neutral, drive. That's the cable that runs this thing here. So you unscrew that from your bottom of your steering column, shift your your transmission down to like low, pull this whole cluster thing out and jiggle it around, and it'll come out of there. This is the actual bezel that comes out. There's about 12 or 15 screws. The hard to find ones are the ones up here in the middle, and then on the side here, and the outside, all the way at the top there, and the outside little gauge cluster there's also a screw. But otherwise there's about 15 screws all the way around. That comes off fairly easy. You're going to take off the knobs for your radio. That pulls off fairly easy. While I had mine out, I sprayed a bunch of WD-40 down my speedometer cable, put some lube on that collar, get that ready to go back on, and I put some conductive grease on all these connector pins. Hopefully that'll go back on, and hopefully that solves all of my problems. I replaced the circuit tape, circuit board thing on the back of this thing. Oh, that's one more thing. You have to take off the speed of the gas gauge. There's two screws on the front of the gas gauge. The outside there, one, two, and then this little nut up here, screw up here. Then the gas gauge will pull straight out. Once you've pulled that out, you need to pull out 1, 2, 3. These things here, because they hold the circuit tape captive between these things and the back of the housing. So you got to pop these out with that gas gauge removed. Once you move that, pull the old one off, put the new one on, snap these back in, and put the gas gauge back in. Anyway, I hope this helped out some guys. Good luck. Hope mine works when I get it back together.